Guys, if you want to hear anything about the abnormal, the things you haven't heard about, cultivate to elevate, we're going to be talking to. This is going to be a fantastic conversation. I'm looking forward to this myself. I've been following this guy for quite some time. He has information, and when I want to know details about a topic, I literally just get online and I follow him. He has details specifically about things that I want to know. Let's see if he's here. Waiting for him to join. So put in where you're from as you're coming in. It's going to be, and if you have any questions saved up, I know that you guys have probably seen his channel, Cultivate to Elevate. And at one point he got canceled at 70,000. I'm kind of curious about that too. Okay, and so put down where you're from, and if you have any questions, we'll be taking some questions from the audience as well. Okay. 40 days of fasting? Are you doing fasting for 40 days? I mean, I did 44 days. So if you are doing 40 days of fasting, please let me know. Tell us where you're coming in from. Does the Rife machine really work for cancer? I mean, frequency machines really work, but before you get too deep into that, you've got to get mineralized, you got to get the tissue moving. If I had cancer, I'd be diatomaceous earth, Irish sea moss. I'd be doing boron at 100 milligrams a day. I'd be doing fascial maneuvers. I'd be taking Power Kirk 30, and then I would use the machines. Here we go. Hello.
What's going on, brother?
I don't even know your name. I apologize.
Matthew. Nice to meet you.
Matthew. Gary, obviously. And you know what? I got to tell you, I have been watching your stuff for a long time. So I'm going to tell you that it's an honor to have you here.
I'm happy to be here and happy to hear that you've been watching the information. I try to put it out there regardless of all the censorship that we face, with all the nonsense.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you mind me asking what your birthday is?
January 16th.
Okay, Master level Capricorn. You're down. So for you, it's a little bit about retribution. It's like you want to get that information out, and you're a master level of doing it too. So you're always thinking, always learning, always growing.
Yeah, that's it. That's what it is. The Capricorn Sun, Aries Moon, and then Gemini ascending. So the combination kind of add a little bit to the Gemini's the chatterbox, and then the Aries brings in a little bit of the fire. And then the Capricorn is, meticulous, being very meticulous like the goat. So it's funny that you say that.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes perfect sense now that I get a chance to kind of get a feeling for who you are. Because you have a very, very calm demeanor and very factual demeanor. But there's a side of you that wants to even the score, and I can tell that too.
Yeah. That side used to be very, very strong at one time. It was actually, I think, too much, like you were just saying. And then it's calmed down a lot because I think as I got into a lot of these rabbit holes, you can kind of go crazy, with all of these topics and things like that. But a lot of it has now, because I've learned the other side of there are solutions to it all rather than just like, the chaos, because a lot of times they're trying to put us in chaos to keep us in that fear state. But when I started learning the solution side, it really kind of changed a lot of that energy and then kind of leveled everything out.
Yeah, I completely agree, because when when I was in the clinic and I was, I grew up in this world. I didn't accept it because I thought, well, science and there's logic and reason and order. But my mom and my sister definitely raised me in this world. And then as I was in the clinic, I started finding how deep the rabbit hole went, because here it is, I'm not a doctor, but I have a massive clinic, a massive following, and we were repairing people or helping people through disease and dysfunction that no one else in the world could help. And I'm like, how is it possible that I'm the guy doing this? And like what's missing in our world that makes us not do it? And then working on some of the top leaders in the world in every capacity. You know, our clients were the super elite, super rich, everybody from the Disney family all the way through to like the Ben Afflecks of the world, to the Olympic runners, pro athletes and stuff like that. And and I just kept finding one thing after another that just didn't make sense. And then that's when I kind of switched my mind back to, okay, there's more to this.
Well, and what you just said with that is when I had all my health ailments, you know, like when I had tonsillitis all the time, they would keep trying to tell me they need to remove my tonsils. And I thought maybe there's something in my terrain that's messing up my body. You know, it's detecting all the toxins in the terrain, and it happened to be scented products. As soon as I got rid of the scented products, like those, you know, those Axe body sprays and all those things that used to be real popular, instantaneously all of that was fixed. And I thought, well, my tonsils, I'm 37.
37. Okay, yeah, so just getting perspective, I'm 54. So I'm just about a little less than 20 years older than you, so we're a generation apart. But you're definitely in a generation that came in, you're in a Capricorn generation, basically, that said, we're not gonna put up with this anymore. We don't believe what you believe. Like my grandparents and my parents followed the narrative of the line. And I was in that generation that was kind of in between. I kind of wanted to for a bit because that's what everybody else did, but then I didn't want to. And your generation is like, heck with that. I'm gonna do what I want.
That sounds correct. Because I remember when I was sat down and told, like, you know, what my future had to be, I thought, what happened if I do none of those things? You know, if I have to work this job or do that, and I thought, I don't want to do any of that. And it's just kind of funny how it worked out, like you just said. But it was interesting with the root cause situation because, like you were saying, when I went to the professionals, nobody would address the root cause. They would just say, I'm, you know, getting older or it's genetic. And it's like, maybe there's something more than what we're talking about. And then as I realized with the scented products or anything of fragrance, instantaneously my tonsils would swell because they're detecting the toxins in the terrain. And it's just remarkable when you get into all of this. And it's so simple, you know, it makes things so simple and life much easier rather than adding 1,000 different terms and all of this complication to just, you know, energy heals and certain energy, you know, destructures the body. And it's just super simple.
That's my whole mission right now. We have people see us from the social media side, and we talk a lot about different diseases, dysfunctions, because I've worked with them all at one point. And but when people peel back the social media layer and they get into our programs, the message is that it's just super easy to fix everything. It really is. It's a matter of giving the body the tools. Like we have 100 billion nerve endings in our brain. We have 100 trillion nerve endings in our fascia. So saying our brain runs our body is like saying my watch is running, I would say a space station, but that's so bunk anyways. Or my watch is running Google. And it's not possible that that's happening. And so what we've been doing is getting people out of their brains and into their bodies, and we start with basic movements. And then they start opening up and saying, well, if this is true and I can think more, then there must be more to it.
Well, and I like how you said that because I put up a video yesterday about like energy healing with the hands.
I saw that.
And somebody was saying about, you know, how you can redirect the energy of the body. There's just a misdirection of the energy. You know, the energy is flowing maybe too much to one place, and that you can flow it back to the place that needs the healing or that energy to kind of kick back on again. And I like how they said that because that does make sense. Like certain areas have been disabled from our toxins and our terrain and these things and whatever. But if we jumpstart that with breath work and movement and all of this, you know, it's remarkable what the body can do. And it's all simple stuff. You know, it's even the breath work and the movements and chi, prana, orgone, all of that. It's all very simple. And it's been around forever.
Yeah.
You know, before the hijacking of, you know, the Rockefeller medical system and educational system, you know, all of that. So it's remarkable when you get into it, and it's really just kind of changed my way. And then back when I was in the fitness world, you know, when I used to watch people squat 1,000 pounds and do all kinds of crazy things, and basically in my arms at the time, but that was all energy too, you know. So you see all this beautiful energy that happens with, you know, athletes and all these different people that we're just not paying attention to it. And that's what also uplifts everybody too. and we could be tapping into that. And it's all around us. It's free, it's here.
So I'm curious. Yeah, fitness level. Like, first of all, where do you live?
So I'm in Arizona now, but I was originally in Chicago, and I owned a big bodybuilding powerlifting gym and watched everybody do crazy feats of strength and go to the Olympia. And I mean, you name it, I saw it. I watched a guy deadlift close to 1,000 pounds, squat 1,000 pounds. I watched a guy bench 626, just crazy feats of strength that were just remarkable. But there was a lot of energy, the colors, the energy, the people. So when I was in that world, it just showed me something that I didn't realize what I was connected to. And then seeing all of that. And then as I moved out into Arizona and I got more into hiking, connecting to the mountains, barefoot grounding, understanding all the energy, seeing the energy like physically in these things, then it just kind of all connected the dots of that's what I was seeing the whole time, but just couldn't pick up on it.
So okay, we have similar backgrounds. I came through fitness, bodybuilding originally, and I went to the nationals, and then I'm like, at that point, started using steroids, and I'm like, I don't think I want to do this anymore. And so I about switched, but then I fell under a squat. The story goes, a 600-pound squat at the time, and did one of these. And as I did that on the squat, my back went, and then my back torqued, and from that point forward, my entire life had changed. And I was in pain or in and out of treatment my entire life. And what was actually? Did you have anything going on in your body? Like, how did you get? Well, first of all, did you grow up in this world of understanding, or did you just, when you went to Arizona, you came into it?
So with the fitness world, I always kind of ask questions. And like you said, a lot of things didn't make a lot of sense. I mean, one day I kind of sat there and thought, what am I doing with my, my body? I was like 250 at the time, 240, and then now I'm about 180. So I kind of just, a lot of it didn't make sense longevity wise. I couldn't see the longevity in a lot of things. Even a couple people passed away who were in my gym, so I saw things like that too. So, and they were only 52, 53.
Yeah.
So I saw a lot of repercussions of what happens in the fitness world, which is not really shown. And it just kind of changed everything. And then, like you said, I mean, I kind of got to a point where, the longevity part came into it. And I watched this documentary called GMOs Revealed, which was 22 hours long. And it kind of just changed everything. I really started to realize, oh my gosh, this food is being used as a weapon and all these things. And then when I had all these health ailments, as I started fixing all of them, I realized what the root cause was what I'm putting in my body. And then as I kind of went through that phase, I went through a phase like you just said, where I actually pulled my back deadlifting, and I could never look at kind of going to the gym the same again, and I stopped using headphones and I kind of everything. And it's all just changed from there. And it kind of, I remember the day I was laying on the ground, and I'm sure you went through this, but I was laying on the ground for about 3 hours. Nobody said, are you okay? And I'm just like kind of laying there. And I remember I thought, what is this? Why am I doing this to myself? And why am I beating up my body? Even the music that I'm listening to, it was funny because I was going through a USB 2 days ago, and even the music, the words that are being said, and I'm like, this isn't going to uplift me. This is going to bring me down and beat me up and all these things. So I went through this whole thing, and then ever since that day, I kind of just saw fitness completely differently, and I never could see it the same. And props to anybody who's still doing it and is all about it and all of those things. I give total props to those people who are continuing. But just a lot of stuff didn't make any sense. The LED lights, the Wi-Fi's in the gym, the plastic materials, all these different things that all have a resonance. None of it made any sense. And so as I work out outside now, and I just have kettlebells and dumbbells and and I have tuning forks, and I do stuff with tuning forks and things like that, but totally different of how I see things. And it just kind of changed everything. And since that day, I could never look at it the same again. And maybe that happened with you when you got injured. It's like, once you're hurt, you're no longer the superstar anymore. You're no longer the king of the mountain anymore. And then it kind of just, it humbles you. That's the best way to describe it.
Yeah. I think when you said laying on the ground for hours, that's actually one of the turning points for me, is like 3 hours on the ground, literally. rolling around trying to get comfortable, and I couldn't breathe. I couldn't get comfortable. My back was out, and but from there, I've always been pushing an edge or boundary. I don't know if you know this, but I used to encrypt data for like some very important people, and or it depends what you say important is. And I came out as a whistleblower in 2005. Well, promptly after that, not too far after that, after years of coercion with the officials, because I wouldn't turn over my servers, I was arrested, pinned up as a drug dealer, and then spent 27 months in federal custody.
Wow.
17 of that was basically in solitary confinement, and that's actually when everything changed for me. So but before that, I was basically telling the world that the government's spying on you, and here's how they do it. And by the way, you can buy it too. So I was evening the score. That's my Capricorn moon. That's my emotions saying, okay, I'm gonna flatten the line. But that's where it changed for me, and I had a lot of things that came through that experience. It was the best thing that ever happened to me, as a matter of fact. But that's where I knew. That's when I knew everything that I thought about this world was not that way. Because I got to see it. I mean, I'd already seen it in the outside in the clients that I dealt with, but it was one thing to experience it because what I was doing at the time, everything was legal. But I found out that there is legal and there's political, and if you cross the political line, it doesn't matter what the legality is.
Yeah, I was actually researching into iodine yesterday, and there's a lot with that too, and all the legality with iodine and iodine crystals and all of these things. And it's the same thing. There's certain rules in place, and it's just fascinating when you get into what is, technically, not allowed and what is allowed, and why it's not allowed, and I've noticed that's the other thing too, when you follow a lot of this, like you said, a lot of the things that are not allowed to be said, it's because you're going to bring so much truth out there, and that's probably what you were doing. And then as you were humbled with your injury, and then let's say sitting in an area for 17 months, whatever it may be, you really start to have time to rethink things. Yeah. And I thought about that when I was doing my own physical therapy for myself, like trying to pop my discs back into place. And then I did, but it took me about 6 months. But I remember just sitting there like, I got nothing else to do but think, I can only lay on the ground and just sit here and think all day. And it just really kind of made me really just kind of recalibrate, which I think we all need, because between our programming and brainwashing and all the stuff we're, constantly dealt with, it really is different when you kind of take a step away from something and then kind of come back to it.
Yeah. I mean, if I had worked since 9 years old, I had never had a day off. I had a couple of days off. I went on a couple of vacations, but they weren't really days off because I still had work in my mind. I was still, on business calls and stuff like that. So that was my first time out. And then my second one was the pandemic. And the pandemic, I had spent, coming up to the pandemic, I had spent at that time a decade in building a clinic with 52 practitioners, and we were doing stuff that no one else in the world was doing. That's why we had clients from all over the world. And people were coming out, I wouldn't say healed, but they were coming out in a functional position where they weren't going in. And our clients, like you said, Olympic athletes, professional athletes, where the team couldn't fix them when we could. But then the second time out was the pandemic, when I got to take, after 10 years of working with people and thousands and thousands and thousands of people, I got to then go and say, well, I want to apply all these things. Because when I was doing it, I was 12, 14 hours a day. The only thing I could apply was going to sleep and getting up the next day and working. And so I got my second time out, and my second time out was a couple of years, again, about 27 months, about the same time that the first one was. But that was where Jason, Cynthia, and myself, we just got in. We said, well, what if we just practice this stuff that we've been talking about? And these fascial maneuvers are I've been in some sort of care since I was 13 years old. But since I was 17 when I did the squat, I've been in 2 to 3 days a week minimum of some sort of chiropractor, massage therapy, you name it, all over the world, spending millions of dollars only to get worse over time.
Yep.
And so you got shut down at 70,000, right?
Yeah. So they deleted me because I put up an advertisement for all of the professionals saying to take, these and everything else. And I showed all of the advertisements. I put them all in a row. And I put every single one from every year from the 1950s to 2020. And I showed every advertisement and I put them all together. And then that next day it shared like 5,000 times within 10 minutes. It was just going absolutely crazy. And I remember the next day I signed back on and the page was gone. And I thought, wow, I must have struck a nerve in that one and whatever. And then so I rebuilt this page and the other page, the Cultivate Elevate 2, which is, that page is heavily censored now. But I rebuilt both of them and then just kept going and keep, trying to put out the information. And it's interesting because even on platforms like Telegram too, I've seen, the censorship on there, or there's like bots that come in and all these bots will like flood the channel. So it's interesting that certain topics just kind of cue the AI to kind of just come in and kind of just diminish it. And I watch it sometimes too with my stories. The stories will drop by 50 to 60% depending on the topic that I talk about. And it's just crazy. But yeah, the censorship is very heavy on this platform. And I've even seen it where people can't comment. Like their comment is restricted and they just write like, hey, Matt, how are you? Or I did a giveaway, trying to tag their friends and it says restricted comments. So it's wild how deep the censorship goes on all of this and everything else for just the stuff that's the truth, that has been shown by others saying it too. So it's not like it's something different. It's the truth, but it resonates on a high frequency. That's what I realized.
Yeah, so there's something I talk about this behind the scenes quite a bit, but I see stuff every day that people get shut down for, and stuff that I mean when I started telling people why they're so sick because of chemtrails in 2018-19, I had the clinical evidence, medical evidence in my own labs. That's when the banks came in to shut us down. That's when the state came in. It was just like a free for all, and I'm like, I've been here before. I'm getting out of it. So I left the United States at that time, and then went dark for a couple of years, and then just came back, helping people. Like right now, we don't depend upon algorithms. We have just sheer referral numbers that get it out there. But do you think that now that you have less flack, or you can actually say what you want? Is there certain things that you just don't talk about? Or
I've learned I still say everything. I've just reworded how I say something. Like saying the word professional instead of all the other names that people have. That seems to not hit a bell. And what's interesting too is I think also with censorship, when it got so heavy, like on YouTube and everything, I think at one time they kind of just have stopped with a lot of it too, because they're losing so many people. And just like you said, like what you're doing with referrals, they can't stop. I mean, they can't stop your website and all the information that you're presenting as well. And if you're everywhere, that's what I would learn to do. After they deleted me, I thought I'm going to post my information every single page, every website, everything I can put it on, because, good luck trying to block all of that. And that's where it kind of really changed me. And that's also when I moved a lot to Telegram too. But, I really started to realize like, you have to be everywhere with the information. And it's important to talk about these topics because like we're going back to the root cause of illness. If they're bombarding the skies with all the nonsense that they're putting into the air, so that they can, save us from the sun, as they tell us and whatever. But, if they're doing all of that, then somebody could have a health ailment related to that, like you just mentioned. And then they're thinking, well, I'm doing all of these things and I can't figure it out. And it's like, well, maybe it's what's in your water, and it's good to be able to put something out there so that I think people can see. And like you said, if you show the evidence of you have lab tests and things like that, then at least people can kind of connect the dots. Like, oh my gosh, the toxicity of cadmium is through the roof, so that people are aware of these things. But I feel like with the censorship and all, I think it's gotten to the point where if people get like, fact checked or blocked, whatever it may be, it just adds to the truth. Because I put up a video about, like, for example, about oil and water and how we're not running out of either one, and there's unlimited of all of that. And that video got hit with an instantaneous thing. And that video shared in so many times. And I laughed because people now realize wait a minute, that kind of makes sense. Like that, this all kind of things. And the way that they would say that this is not true, they didn't have any evidence of why it's not true. They just said it's simply not true. And it's like, well, in a debate, or in the case of law, that's what you would be doing, having a side. So it kind of it's just shown me that I think they kind of don't know what to do anymore, because there's so many people, and I feel like this is a very large awakening of energy at the same time. But there's so many people who are revealing the truth and have become the best reporters I've ever seen, that it's kind of like, well, what are you going to do now? When everybody's speaking the truth, how do you stop millions of us? You can stop one, but it's very hard to stop millions or billions at that point.
Somebody asked, what do you think of Santos Bonacci? You ever follow him or read his stuff?
I was actually just watching his thing about the moon, because I was talking about how the moon's been missing and all kinds of the eclipse things and weird things going on. But I've heard a lot of great things. I've watched a couple of his videos in the past. He does a lot of stuff with frequencies and fractals and a lot of sacred geometry. And it's, when you dive into that topic, it's a really fun topic to kind of go into.
He taught me something really important, actually. So irrespective of what we believe about this world, we land in a fluid, adaptive, biological computing system, which has rules. This body has a set of rules, and those rules are, first of all, light and frequency, because light is a frequency, is dominant, the architecture of the human body. Without having the light and the frequency, that's what triggers the actual hormones. I went 44 days fasting just to prove that food wasn't a fuel. And 3 of us did it. And now I have people fasting all over the world. And during my fast right now, like, I can fast and I don't even change my body composition anymore, because I've been doing it so long. So my last, 15-day, 20-day fast that I was doing, I would go 5-6 days without sleeping too. In other words, let's rethink what we've been told about the human body. I mean, I always grew up thinking the bones are structured, but then when I got into medicine, I'm like, wait a second here. None of the bones in the body touch except for the teeth, the rib cage, and the ears. So,
you're right. Yeah.
So how could they be structured? And then, take the knee, for example. Well, it's the cartilage. No, you touch that thing, it rips and shreds the meniscus. Well, it's the muscles. Well, only one muscle crosses the top from the femur down into the calf, and that's not holding it up. It's a tendon. Well, they keep it from pulling apart. So what's left? Well, fascia. So we started operating on this belief that fascia was the structure, and we, clinically, and that's the success of the clinic, is we just treated the body a different way. But if the bones don't touch, then the bigger question is, what is structure? Then what do the bones do? And then what do the muscles do? And so in my journey here, just recently, I've been waiting for this time. I've been basically stripping away my muscle. And this summer, I took this guy that came up. He was doing some media work for us, animation. He had a Liz Frank break, a double. So one of the worst you could ever see. You're not even going to walk. You're not even going to touch the ground with that for 9 months. So after 2 months, he's walking, moving around. He hasn't used crutches in months, and supposedly you can't do this. And what it was is I carried him down a hill, like about a grade like this, and I thought, well, that was kind of easy. I didn't even know I could do that. So I said, what if I carry you up the hill? I turned around and ran up the hill with him. I'm 2 to 3 times stronger than I was. I'm the lightest. I haven't been this light since I was 14 years old. But I used to regularly squat 600 pounds and regularly bench 400 pounds. And I am infinitely stronger in natural motions today than I have ever been in my life. And it was based on this principle. Like, if I take and I restrict my shirt and I try to lift, well, I got a restriction, so I have to use more muscle, hormonal, adrenaline, norepinephrine, cortisol energy to make that happen. If I remove the restriction, it's less. Well, but that restriction is not on the outside, it's on the inside, right to the bone. That's our fascia. So what happens if we remove all of the restriction? So I'm 3 inches taller than I was 4 years ago.
Huh. I could see that. That reminds me, have you ever seen Sistema, which is Russian martial arts?
Yes.
That reminds me, because everything is energy. You're not hitting somebody based on your actual fist. You're hitting somebody based on the energy that's flowing through your hand and through your whole body. And then as you crank up your energy, then that energy is then flowing through your hand, and that's what you're hitting somebody with. And it was remarkable. I saw my one buddy get hit one time, and he was just out for 3 hours, you know, and the instructor, I remember, he's like, I didn't even hit you that hard. You know, that was like a little tap. And if you saw him, he was just dancing. You know, he would just dance, and they would dance until the energy was very, very strong. And then they would dance kind of like in a circle, and that would crank up the energy even more as all 10 people would begin to kind of like dance together. And as they would just kind of move, they would build up that energy. But that sounds exactly of that. And I've realized we have no idea of how our body, like how much true potential there actually is. And I even thought about this, because this kind of relates in the weightlifting world, is even like the medieval armor people used to wear, you know, back in the times in which we have been told. If you think of the weight in
they couldn't carry it.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
Okay, so then how would somebody be wearing, let's say, you know, 1,000 to 2,000 pounds while riding a horse and all of these things, unless they could tap in, like you were just talking about, to the energy to where they were now stronger, they were more vibrant, or they could levitate. You know, you could take it another step further. But
that's where we're going. It's like, I have a completely different understanding of the human experience, not the human body, the human experience. Like, we're taught that even in the mystic circles that I'm a body and I have an aura. But just systemically, that's not true. There's a ball of energy as part of that whole human experience. And you and I can only see a portion of that, which is me or you. But a dog can see it, a cat can see it. There are animals that can see it. We have photonic scanners that can see it. We can take pictures of it. And so that means that basically there's this intelligent energy, and at the center of it is this stubby, dense, thick little human. So we don't actually have an aura. There's an aura that has a human. And that means that the aura is moving around, because this what happened is that I worked with a quadriplegic and I got his hand to move and I couldn't explain it. And so I spent 10 years trying to rationalize in my mind how I did it. Well, what we've discovered through our own research is that muscles and the brain doesn't move the body. I'll give you an example. When I'm moving, what we're doing is nerve conducting testing on a patient. And so we're toning the nerves out to see how long it took for the signal to go to the brain, when it go back, where it was stuck. And that route from the foot to the brain back to the foot for motor control was 1.5 seconds. So I asked a seemingly innocent question. Well, then how do we move when we step on glass? And so they said it's a ganglion reflex. And I said, that can't be, because then I just go boing. Yeah. So what I'm doing is I'm moving intelligently away from danger before my brain even knows. Every system on my body is moving away from the danger, and my brain doesn't even yet know that there's danger present. So then that means that something other than the brain, muscle, nerve connection moved the body. And that's my interpretation was fascia. You know, we're 70% water, 25% silica, sand, and 5% bacteria, viruses, and parasites. If we put us in a centrifuge and just spin us around, that's all we have left. So basically, we're an organic liquid crystal, and crystals amplify signal. So we have this energy around us, and we're trying to transmute that signal. Exactly. I saw you the other day putting that on.
Yeah,
if we clog the crystal, then we don't get the signal, because we don't really think. Thinking is we have all this information in our intuition, or in this entropic field that goes around the world. That's why when rats run a maze here, they run faster in China. If they run that same maze, and they run faster in India, if they've never run the maze before, because they tap into a global intelligence. So that means that we actually are moving in a way before our brain and our body and our muscles and our musculoskeletal system even know it. So that had to be through our crystal, our fascia, because we're the same composition as a quartz crystal. So what do we do when we get heavy metals in there? Well, if that signal's going down here, it goes ping, 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 ping with aluminum, and then I start getting like this. I'm trying to articulate the movement. And this is what there's been an articulated drive at clogging our crystal, basically. And that's what the chemicals and the heavy metals and the fluorides, they clog our crystal. And that means we don't have access to those innate intelligence that we always had. But the problem is that when you take something away slowly, you don't even know it went.
Yes.
And when I was early, I brought cellular phones to Canada in the late 80s, one of the first dealers. And I remember the time when I was driving my car, I used to educate myself with cassette tapes. And I remember the time where I thought, this isn't good. But I justified it because I'm getting business done. But I didn't have that time with myself anymore to reflect.
Yep.
And it was dumbing down our innate abilities. Like when I grew up, there was a phone at my home and there was one at my work. And if I didn't talk to you for 2-3 days, I wasn't worried, and I innately knew where you were. Like, oh, you're probably at work, or you're probably here, and I didn't worry about it. Today, if I text somebody and they're not there, and at 4 hours, I'm calling the police. Hey, something's wrong.
Yeah, we were much more when we had the land phones. It was nice, because you would just make a call, and then people would show up. If they didn't show up, then you just keep going about your day, because you didn't have to be always instantaneously connected. And also, like you were just saying, that instant connection makes us not use, obviously the pineal gland and our third eye and all the frontal cortex. It's disabling a lot of that.
Sure.
And it's funny that you said that. I was reading the book Infinite Mind by Valerie Hunt. I don't know if you read that one, but
yeah.
She explained about, the aura is picking up on everything before everything is happening. And your injuries are based on what the aura is essentially pulling. And you have all your emotions and trauma and everything stored in this aura that's just carrying around with you. And it was interesting because years ago I had an experience in which I consumed, I made a chaga mushroom tea. And I actually made it as a pre-workout to drink it before the gym. And I had an experience in the gym. This was like 5 years ago, or 5-6 years ago. I drank the tea and I was above my body from a third person perspective, seeing everything. And seeing 360 degrees, which was completely mind-blowing. And I remember I sat there and I thought, wow, we don't know much, about anything. Cause it's like it felt like a video game, just me being above. And I remember I started seeing certain people, they had like a white glow, and then other people had no white glow. And everybody just had different like energy, and I could feel it like really, really strongly. And I remember I just sat there and thought, like, that day, and this was, before I got into Valerie Hunt's information and all of those things, I just kind of sat there and thought, we have no idea what are, like you said, this crystal being or crystal essence is actually doing or can do. And all the true skills and talents that have just been diminished over time. And even like the Wi-Fi, how the Wi-Fi impacts your ability for the magnetics in your brain to pick up on the GPS. And the birds and the bees and all the dolphins and whales and all of those things too. So it's like we're losing those beautiful skills that are just naturally, a part of us as we take on something else, which is kind of trying to give us something instantaneous. And that's where that's why I kind of try to spend as much time in nature connecting to the earth as possible, because I realize that the more you spend there, the more all of the, the watches, AirPods, and all these funny devices they want to give us. Now they want to give us funny glasses and things. Don't make a lot of sense because I already have all this beauty and I already have all the connection to the nature. Why would I get rid of that for something artificial, which doesn't have that feeling or the essence, And same thing like you were saying with the technology, when you get the instant pings and notifications, you're never having time to yourself to just read a book, to just kind of delve into something and kind of let your mind just wander. And when I got into the work of messing around with the tuning forks and just kind of understanding it, it really just, zones you into a completely different, frequency. And it just kind of lets the mind just unravel. And that's what we're supposed to do.
Yeah. So here's some things you can chew on so my whole thing was I have to think about everything differently. Like the entire body has to be, what I know about the body, we don't know anything. We have 2.2 million, everything in our body runs on a protein. We have 2.2 million proteins in our body. We only have identified 50,000 of them, and we only know what 5,000 of them do good. So to say that we have any understanding of the body is complete bunk. We have no idea. And I always say to people, what are we doing? What are we doing like today that 30 years ago we were going, that was stupid 30 years ago. So what are we doing today that we're going to look at in 30 years saying that's stupid today? So that's the foundation of the work that we do. And you have 50 trillion cells. You can put a voltage meter on a cell that has a 1.4 volt charge. That means that you have 70 trillion volts of electricity. You're literally a lightning bolt. But then why are we not harnessing or using this? Like when we go rub our feet and then go touch somebody or touch something, electricity comes and goes from us and grounds to something else. So why are we not using that? And if you look at the cartoons where you have this field and these guys would get electricity and they would rise up. Manual free energy. Yeah. And this is what I love about, this is what I love about your work. Because I innately know, but right now I'm focused on helping people in their bodies. But I don't want to go and spend the time to figure out all the details that you figured out. That's why I watch your channel. I've been watching your stuff for a long time.
So those are Tesla coils connected into the ground, and then you have a harnessing plate, and then you're collecting the static electricity. And like you were just talking about atmospheric electricity, Herman Plossin, and all of that, that's all in static fields. And the more I realize, this is one topic that we just don't learn about, static fields and atmospheric energy. And like you just said, that's what your body's creating. The same thing, static fields and atmospheric electricity. You're one big, beautiful antenna that's harnessing the beautiful plasma in the air. But
so let's talk about movement then. So there's where the interesting part comes in. Like if you cut off an arm, you can still see the photonics of it, or a leaf, right? That's how we get prosthetics to work, because there's no nerve signal that tells it to work. It's actually it's the bioelectronic field. That's why when we cut a liver in half and it grows, well, I've had over 1,000 gallbladders grow back, where I watch them grow back. So the body's meant to regenerate. But the question is, why do we not regenerate? So when we talk about movement and how movement works in itself, that means that if I can move a prosthetic like this with my thought process, that means that all movement happens that way. But what happens is the musculoskeletal system is actually the grounding of that movement. So I go to move and it stabilizes the bones and the muscles to allow that movement to have stability. That's why when I take away the signaling, like with heavy metals, I start going like this.
Yep. Yeah.
And that means that movement itself, and this is the funny one, is that movement can't come from brain and nerve, because before I move, I have to have an emotion called a desire.
That goes right into that. You're clearly in photography.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to put a picture so everybody can see what you're explaining just in a visual form.
Mm-hmm.
But that's just that beautiful energy. And like you just said, that's what allows somebody, when they lose a limb, to be able to still be there, because that energy is still there. But go on. Sorry, I didn't mean to.
No, that's perfect, because it's evidence for what I'm saying, which is I believe that we have this intelligence that's moving us around, and the stubby human has all these layers of programming, beliefs, of subterfuge through chemical involvement, all these things that's stopping us from interpreting what we need anyways. That's why we're not healthy today. We used to be healthy 50, 60, 70 years ago. And today we're not. So before I move, I have to have an emotion, which is measurable in frequency. And that emotion, I have to have a desire to move. Otherwise, I don't move. I have a thought without a desire, but I'm not going to move. So movement takes emotion to move us. And this is where the whole idea of rethinking the body and how we've been taught and relegated down to the animal in us, because I believe we're a hybrid at some point. I mean, we have 10% human cells. We're basically a government over our bacteria and our viruses. So movement itself is actually coming from an innate intelligence telling us what to do. Like if I'm thirsty, how do I know I'm thirsty? It's like, oh, I should go get a drink. Like, where does that signal come from?
Yeah. Yeah. Or why do you have that thought about something that, just randomly happened to you, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, I think I should call my friend. I feel like they're in need or something, or they might, I wonder what they're up to. And then they answer their phone and they're like, hey, Joe, I was waiting for you to call, and it's always like exactly on point because of the ether and the energy, that everything that's flowing around us.
So you're hardcore decoding the actual principles of what I'm saying. That's why I watch you, because I'm over here applying all this stuff directly to the body. And here's our things. We actually have science around what we do, but science is a funny thing. It's a popularity contest. It's how many sightings do you have, and that's basically like how many likes do you have on social media. Doesn't matter whether it's right or wrong. Does everybody like you and agree with you or not? And so we took a different path because in several ways over the last 13 years, we're trying to get these ideas about the body, but people are like, where's the science? Where's the science? So what we did is we turned all of our stuff free to the world. And now we have hundreds of thousands of testimonials. Now we're at the stage, like we have 20 million people doing this around the world at any given time, with about 3 million people on media. But now we're at the stage with 4,000 plus testimonials every day. So now we're at this, and a lot of them are coming from doctors now. So now we're at the stage where science needs to explain why it's working.
Yeah, that changed.
That was the threshold.
That changes a lot of things, because now when they have to try to explain something like that, now all of a sudden it's like, wait, we have to rewrite the books. And that's like when I get into the work with pyramids, there's bigger pyramids than Giza. And it's like, oh wait, now we have to rewrite the books and say that it's completely different. So I feel like with the work that you're trying to do too, there's some ego there's still there for those people who are in that field, and it will take some time for them to kind of let that go or dissolve that before your information, which is correct because you're getting testimonials, which is science-based actually, which is funny.
It is. Yeah.
But, it will take some time for that to happen because the fact that I've realized, like, even if you put up something that is from the science or scientific, they can still say that's not correct too. It's like, yeah, but that's your science. And it's like, no, that's still not correct. So it's always a funny game, like you said, with all of that.
Yeah, that's why they can always argue the science, but they can't argue the result.
Yes.
So you can argue all the reasons why, and to be honest with you, here's what I say. Like, I've been studying the body and fascia my whole life, but clinically working with it or in a process like this for 14 years. And I have a very strong belief about why it happens, but I'm completely open to the fact that is completely wrong, because I know I'm just telling a story that's better than the story that described it before. And I bought so hardcore into that story before about how the body worked and how proteins work, and I had to eat food. I bought into that story before, and so that story itself was the belief mechanism. It's like, why does one person, like, how can I go 44 days without eating food, hiking, climbing, doing mountain? And what's funny is I put a post up the other day. At the end of 44 days, I was still fat. I mean, like, how is that possible? And but then you have somebody else that literally starves to death.
Yes.
And so what's the difference? Well, it's based upon the most limiting thing that they've done to us, which you touch on all the time, which is the belief systems. They put it out there right there. They tell us how this box fits, like how our body works, how our life works. And you're bringing up all these evidence. I mean, I love watching. I love watching about like the muds, the mudslides, the mud bath, the mud, whatever you call it. It's there. It's evidence. I love the cathedrals. It's like, but I almost get mad at myself. I'm like, how did I not see that? We can't even do that shit today. We can't even build those things properly.
Well, on that, right? So you have Chicago, 1893. I mean, look at that design. That's just absolutely remarkable. And this is all gold too. I found out this statue is made out of pure gold. So imagine trying to mine or get the minerals or the materials to make all of this. If this is all, let's say 400,000 tons of marble and stone, things that you're going, wait, 1893, you're on horse and wagon. And you see people on horses, which is funny because here's the people on the horses. But then the building behind it is 5 stories tall. Yeah. So then you're like, well, then how did these people build this? And the other thing too is, like you just were mentioning, because we're talking a lot about energy, is the energetic principles of these buildings and the resonance that comes from it. Yeah. A building like this, if you started chanting and doing breath work in the center of that, it has the perfect acoustics. And then all of the materials of that building start to resonate and start to heal you and kind of increase your energy. But, you know, to build something like that, and it's funny, these are no longer in Chicago. You can see them in India and a couple different places as well. But, you know, when you start to look at all of this, it's another one where we should ask questions of, you know, they were building devices like this, which were dynamos, which were using magnetism. And then we switched to electricity and we got rid of all the things related to magnetism. You know, you really start to ask a lot of questions. And, you know, then they show a bunch of things where it looks like they demolished them right there. If you see that, that's the ruins that's left over, and then told us a different story. And my whole thing is just, I think it's because I just have it's the curious backbone, but I just like to ask questions about everything, because anything I've been told, I always feel like I'm being sold on it, and I don't want to be sold on it. And I would rather use my natural instinct to kind of see and go, you know, if there was a mud flood, if there was an event that took place, if there was this, well, let's think of the time frame in which we were told. And what's even crazier is if you go back into the Roman time that they told us of 1500s, imagine being on a horse and a chariot, you know, and carrying around marble and stone, and then trying to paint paintings on a ladder upside down with a candle. You know, things that you sit there and go, wait, what? You could make it so perfect? We can barely make this straight door, you know, with tools right here, and everything else. Let this person's painting in the dark with, you know, a candle or a little kerosene lamp or whatever it is. It just doesn't make sense. And that's why it's, like you were saying, it's so important to kind of ask questions on these topics.
So I guess here's the bigger question, because you and I both know there has been a coordinated and articulated process of deception. So the bigger question is, why do you think it happened?
I think it's to really kind of keep us in that scarcity fear mindset, you know, that there's no abundance. Because what's weird about a lot of these books, specifically in these pictures, is the word abundance used to be on all of these buildings. Everywhere you saw it said, the truth shall set ye free. And there was the word abundance, and the U was a V instead of the U. So I think personally, if you saw all of that all the time, you kind of will start thinking outside the box. And I think that will uplift humanity. And I think also you'll start asking questions, which would also instill the creative mind that has been disabled over time. Because if you just told people that, you know, the typical story of the Oregon Trail and all the other things, then people then will believe that it was the Oregon Trail and their mule died of dysentery. They're not going to ask more questions than, how did somebody build something like this? And can I do that? And were they using maybe sound and light frequency to create all of this, almost like cymatics or something like that? Yeah. You know, I think it really just kind of, I think it really is to do that. And when we tap into all of this, you get into a lot of how they were producing so much energy. And if we keep people in this whole, you know, we're running out of everything all the time, even though everything's abundant, you know, then that's another factor, I feel, to diminish people. You know, like even what you're talking about, you haven't ate for 40 days, you know, you're doing water fasting, you're still lifting the same amount of weight. Well, that goes against everything in fitness, because fitness would tell you you need protein, carbs, and fats. And if you don't have those, you can't function. But you just defied all of that. Yeah. And that starts to break things apart. And I think, too, when you get into this one as well, it's the same thing. It's breaking the narrative that we've been told. And all of a sudden people start going, well, why don't we build like this? Yeah. Why don't I build my house out of beautiful materials so that I can uplift, you know, the energy? Instead, why are we using all these polymers and plastics? And then it kind of leads you into all these other, obviously, rabbit holes. But that's kind of my take. It's more of keeping people in a fear set or scarcity mindset, because then you can keep the control. If people realize that there's abundance and there's beautiful energy everywhere, then they can see that, and it spreads like kind of like wildfire.
So in your idea, is it getting? Are we moving towards something positive or something negative?
I think positive, because, you know, the more this topic is talked about, and the more we're getting into energy, and even like what you're doing with the movement and these things, it's really showing somebody something else. And I think for a long time, a very long time, you only had the newspaper and the radio. and the newspaper and the radio were controlled all the times. And then any book past about 1920, you know, you have a lot of controlled stuff in there as well. So before 1920s, you had a lot more about the ether and the energy and all these things. So I think the more people start to dabble into these different topics, the more it's just going to excite the mind. And as people's minds are excited, things start to change. And the reason I say that is because I have a lot of moms who reach out, who homeschool, and they teach a lot of the stuff that I've been showing in their homeschooling program.
Yeah, you're part
and
of
these
the
little kids
homeschooling curriculum now.
Yeah. So it's amazing to see these little kids learning about like electroculture and all these different topics and things like that. And it's just remarkable. So then you sit and think, well, think of what it's going to do to the next generation. You know, if everybody
understands homeschool.
Yeah, I'm fanning, what do you call it, fanning out on the side here or whatever. But yes, actually my granddaughter now likes the electroculture in the garden. So.
Oh, that's amazing. I'm happy. It's some copper to it, you know, some copper to all of that.
Right. I equally enjoy watching you and fascinated with the things that you put on your channel. So, yeah, it's been really interesting to listen.
So where does it? Okay, so I believe that we're going in a positive future. Now so if we're going in a positive future, there's this thing about human beings is that when the pain of staying the same is greater than the pain of changing, human beings tend to change, but not before then. Listen, I've been fighting the fight for a long time. I did hardcore time in a federal prison fighting a fight. So I really fought the fight. And there's something that come to me pretty recently, which was, well, if we weren't doing all this shit to us, we wouldn't change. And saying that also is that I'm not sure if it's for this platform, but I believe a lot of people are going to go away in the next couple of years. A lot. Like I have been very public within our internal circles worldwide. I've even given numbers. And because it came to me the same way that the fascia maneuvers came to me. They came to me through visions. And I just like zone out and then have this inspiration and go do something. And it makes no sense that these crazy little movements, all of a sudden people are healing all over the world, including kids coming off spectrum and autism and athletes performing better. It doesn't make sense really when you think about all the stuff that we technically go to do. So I see this world that there's no way to get away from the fact that it's going to depopulate pretty quick.
Well, there's
enough
definitely,
in place.
I was going to say, there's definitely things that are occurring, but the question is, you know, if you get into like the NPCs, you know, and all of that stuff and things like that, you sit there and wonder, well, how many people are real and how many people are not real? And then in this time frame, you know, so it's something to just kind of think about. And, you know, the more, go ahead.
That is the thing, because it's like, how many people are just LARPs out there? You know, how many people in my reality? And I've been questioning that a lot.
Me too. Can you talk a little bit more about that and from your perspective?
Yeah, so, you know, when I was talking about my out-of-body experience, I was talking about how some people had kind of like a halo around them, and then, or like a glow to them, and other people did not. And I kind of sit there and think sometimes it's like, you know, you meet certain people and your soul is already kind of connected to them. You've met them before in the past lives, whatever it may be, but you always feel connected to them no matter what. And those people are very in your circle. But there's other people who've just kind of passed through, and you've maybe seen them, maybe haven't, and then they kind of just lost, and it's kind of like they're just existing. And so I sometimes think, if you think about it that way, it's like sometimes you meet a person, you can feel their energy, but a lot of people, you can't feel their energy at all. It's almost like they're just here, they're placed, their crystal is here, but they're not really fully plugged in. I guess that's the easiest way to describe it. And then you're then meeting other people where they're fully plugged in, and you're like, wow, I've known you forever. Your energy, we've been together for whatever it may amount of time. And it's kind of like, you've already been here and you've already done this. And now we're just kind of going through this. And I think of this in timelines, because if you go into like past lives and being connected in the past as well, it's almost like this is our timeline for this time around. And this is why we're talking, because otherwise, like even me and you meeting and connecting, you know, obviously we're on the same path. Our soul's timeline is on the same path. And it's like, if I didn't start speaking or you didn't start speaking, maybe we would have never met. But our energy or our timeline is going forward and backwards at the same time. So then we're converging. And that's kind of how I see it. Versus there could be other people in the realm, and those people are just here. It's just like when you used to play a game and you click on somebody and they keep just repeating the same thing. They don't give you a story. They're just like, hey, John, you're here. And they just keep going through it. So everybody who is here and all the people in this chat and everything else all chose to be here, and we're all in this timeline together. And I feel like there's a lot of those people out there who are also spreading the word on all of these things. And we're just all meeting again. That's kind of what it is.
I agree with that. I'm going to get that. And I have a question before we get off about...
Of course.
People... So my grandmother used to tell stories about the people that her parents told her about that were so tall.
Giants.
And Grandma talked about them, and she had pictures, black and whites, in this box in her closet. And I have everybody in the family trying to find these pictures because she's passed long ago. But it was her grandparents, I guess. So it would have been way back. And she used to tell me about seeing them, these tall people. And then she had the pictures.
There's more evidence that there were giants around than
So I know that's true. Like, I know that's true. I heard it. I heard the stories from generations. So when we listen to these generational stories from our great-grandparents, it really does show you that that's the way life was then. And I find it fascinating. I'm going to get the iPad.
I was going to show you something. So by the way, you reached out to somebody who was in our program, and through somebody, and at the exact same moment, my partner reached out to you the same day. So
yes.
So that's why I'm like, okay, this is supposed to happen. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you.
And on that topic of the giants, you
Yes.
know, you have to wonder why the doors were so tall in these old buildings. You know, why would you build a 50-foot or 100-foot door, you know, for who? You know, because we're tiny. We're, 6 feet and below, so it's like if you have somebody who's, even 20 feet or 30 feet tall, who knows what the size of what it could be. Because it's interesting when you get into static fields, you can see how things could be bigger with higher static fields. But, 50-foot, 100-foot, 200-foot doors that are made out of pure bronze and brass and gold, you sit there and go, well, number one, you need a lot of materials. And number two, that must be a really big person. And how big were people at one time? It's crazy when you get into it.
Yeah, so that's
fascinating.
Even when you go just even back to Greece and Rome, the easements were 30 feet. But, that's actually, by the way, some of the foundation of the fascial maneuvers came from Greek statues.
Huh.
That's true.
Because I used to sit there as a kid and I'm like, why were they in that weird, awkward pose?
Yes.
I'm like, so basically, we'll get a chance to spend more time together. And I'll tell you the history of it. But this is all stuff these were awarenesses that I had. But it was also a commitment when I was in solitary confinement. I was in a lot of pain, a lot, probably like 9.9. And I literally prayed and said, God, if you help me out of this, I'll spend the rest of my life helping people. And I'm in a federal facility. So I obviously I'm not like a gangster or drug dealer, but I'm in with guys who killed presidents, right? And there was overcrowding and literally I had that reference point, and within an hour my door went click. Door never goes click. It goes click once every 30 hours. You get out and you get to do something. And they took a neurologist who was a chiropractor and put him in my cell. And for 14 months, that's how I learned to translate all that information I had about the human body into my hands.
Makes sense.
So I had this inspiration. A guy came in. He was a ranger, and I used to work with SEALs Foundation, Rangers, stuff like that. and I helped him out. But I'm like, he came in, and the guy who raised me, my brother, who's like my father, he this guy, he looked exactly like him, and my brother had committed suicide. But my brother was the one who came to me through all these mediums to talk to me about the body, and I'm like, and this guy had the same birthday, and he looked identical. So I said, well, if he's got doppelgangers, I do too. So I went to find mine. This is one of mine.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Same teeth.
Wow.
Same hairline.
Yeah. Yeah.
Same neck, same eye, same earlobes.
Very similar.
Same life story. So we found 9 of them.
Well, we'd never met her before. She just walked in the door one day.
Because I asked for it.
Yeah.
And that was the start of my, okay, there's something more to this journey than I think. Because I now have evidence. I don't need anything else. I've got 9 doppelgangers that I found. Now, because I've been telling people about it, I get pictures from people all the time. And they send me them. I'm like, oh, man, that's me. And they, whoa, wait a second. I don't have those shoes. I get it all the time right now. Because, and somebody said that we look alike earlier, which is more about frequency. You show how when frequency, foam dances, sand aligns, we're 70% water. We're 25% silica sand. And frequency aligns us, but our digital programming is our astrology. That's our programming code. And so when I dance to that frequency, anybody else with the same programming code is going to dance the same frequency. So I went out and found a whole group of people with my same astrology. And guess what? Same pains in their bodies, same problems. A lot of them look like me. And when I have something change in me, there's one, she's probably in here, Debbie. It was funny because I hadn't seen her in a couple months, and I'm like, and I've been leaning up, looking like I'm working out, and I don't work out at all. I don't do anything to work out. And I'm like, she goes, well, I can't understand it. I'm leaning up. I'm getting more muscular. And I'm like, oh, that's me over here doing the work for your part of the frequency. And that's what I believe. I believe that we're all the tentacles of consciousness. And part of it, because you take all the mysticism away, we're still frequency, and we are elements responding to that frequency. So if we have the same frequency, we're going to have similar responses. That means that we're going to look a little bit alike. You can see this when you used to be the gymnast. When people go to the gym, they start to look alike. They get a square jaw. They start to actually physically look alike.
Yep. Yeah, they start to become almost like clones of each other, and they all do the same. They'll do the same routine. They'll listen to the same music. Then they'll go eat the same food afterwards, and become like each other. And they even say that it happens with people when they're dating and they get married. Over time, they start to look exactly like each other because they're doing all the same routines.
They do,
and their frequencies are then merging. So it's fascinating. And I think, like you said, is your energy draws somebody else into your aura at the same time too. Like whatever you're looking for, it's just like these books, as I was showing you these books, when I started looking for these books, then I found all the other books that I needed to find, and then to start looking at all the pictures and things like this of things obviously that didn't make any sense, but everything just led to me finding all the books. Then as I did, this was in the past, I did an Akashic reading, and the lady told me to look into crop circles. Everything kind of just started lining up, and I don't know how the crop circles were going to tell me what to do, but she goes, just look into them. You'll understand. And I was like, all right, and I didn't know where it was going to lead, but it's interesting because at certain times of your life, like you said, the synchronicity or the people coming in who look like you or clones or whatever, it's like they're all supposed to be there, and it's all supposed to be present. And then we have all these like converging timelines. That's why I was talking about like deja vu, which is like you're already knowing what's going to happen on the timeline. It's kind of like if you're going to pick which timeline you're going to go through. And I feel like even us just, obviously communicating, it's like, we could have saw each other today. There could have been a rain check on it, or there could have been something else. And then all of those paths will lead to something related to energy, but a different outcome. But if we're meant to connect, then we connect like we did today and all of these things. So it's funny how things work.
Yeah. So we specifically use astrology as a way to decode the world around us. And And it's a program at any level. It has to be a program, and our constant is the body, so we know the body, and so that's our cycle, and eventually it comes through, and that's how we decipher our world. But when we during the pandemic, when we decided to make everything on our platform accessible, free of charge, then we said, well, how do we do that? And then well, at first we gave donations, and people would donate, but then it was like, well, an old vendor came in and brought us some supplements back. Okay, well, that did it for a while. Now we're going to move past that into larger scale donations, because right now we're getting into children's programs, sports programs, into healing practitioners, doctors, like all over the world. So that means that it takes tens of millions or hundreds of millions of dollars or whatever we have left after whatever is going to go on. But we know that the next 9 months, what we've been accurate with is dates. We can't always tell you what's happening, but we can always tell you when something's going to happen. And that's been very, very constant. Like this next 2 months and 10 days are going to be very intense on people's bodies. And then after that, it's going to be tearing apart anything that doesn't resonate with who they are in their community, local. And then after that, all the way through April, it's going to be the world. And the energies astrologically that align between the last 3 months going into April, and April's Aries war is the same energy in the Pluto return that led to the Civil Revolution, World War I, and World War II.
Makes sense, because it's all, and you can see things, like you said, if you pay attention to everything going on, like even with the eclipse and the dual eclipses in 14 days,
Yeah,
you could see.
What was that with the eclipse?
Tell me what that was.
Yeah, people, like, I've seen stuff in pictures and that I can't explain.
So with it was interesting. So the moon was missing in a lot of places at one time.
Yeah.
I had a lot of people messaging me that, like, they go outside, the moon was supposed to be there, and they're like, it's not there. Then they saw it on different places, like behind their house in another place, and like all these like different arrangements. And it was interesting because I went out last night and it says that the moon should be at like 57 degrees. And I have my compass and it's showing me 42. Mm-hmm. So it's like, it's 15 degrees in a different place. And it's just rising and it's kind of doing whatever it wants, I've realized at this point. But the eclipse was really interesting because when it happened, I was staring directly at it. I stared at it for 20 minutes and just looked at it because I was like, they always try to say not to look at it and whatever. I'm like, I'm just going to do it. So I looked at it for about 20 minutes. And what was interesting was it almost reminded me of like water passing the sun. And people started taking pictures because I started noticing it on the ground. All these like little circles all over the ground that look like little moons and eclipses and whatever. And somebody said, it almost looks like water. And I thought, it is true. It almost looks like little bubbles that are all kind of floating around and whatever. And what I noticed was during those two periods of eclipses, because you had the European eclipse and then you had the American eclipse, you had this really like strange polarity energy with people. And I noticed people were very vicious at that time. I've never seen it as much on social media, but very vicious. And someone even said, like, even in groups they were in, people were very vicious and things. And I was like, it's kind of off. It's very flipping. So it was fascinating when I was watching this. But as I watched into it for about 20 minutes, I mean, my energy has been cranked up ever since. So I think when they tell you, oh, don't look at the eclipse, it's like maybe there's something of a different, it's a higher level sun gazing than we've kind of been shown. Because sun gazing, they do a lot to try to block that. But this eclipse energy is kind of off the charts. And I think that's why everybody used to be connected to them back in the day. And then they kind of lost that. And they just kind of disconnected from the beautiful energy. And if you think about it, if one is positive and one is negative, then it's the perfect balance. Because you have the sun, which is, warm, and then you have the moon, which is cold. So now you have this perfect balance. Imagine that as energy going through the eyes as a light spectrum into the brain. It kind of connects on those dots. So it was fascinating. And now David Copperfield is saying he's going to make the moon disappear, I think in February 2024. And he's like, we've been messing around and working on this. So it's like, what Truman Show, funny show are we living in? And what is actually going on in comparison to what we are being told, and that whole thing.
Yeah,
that's
I'm with you.
And yes, that's exactly, I think, what's happening also.
Yeah.
Totally right. Yes.
Yeah.
So I basically say that what a wonderful time to live.
Not
Yes.
boring.
Yeah, because when I was a kid, I used to think, like I said, I'm almost 20 years older than you. As a kid, I used to think, man, I feel so limited and restricted in this world. But now, since 2020, I feel like, holy crap, this is going to be exactly what I signed up for.
Well, and what you just said with that, it's like the amount of information coming out every day is just absolutely mind blowing. You know, and that's why I was saying, like, even people just reporting and making videos. I mean, people even editing, like, people have it down. It's remarkable. And I feel like on the soul level too, our body has been kind of, or our soul has been wanting this information. You know, 2020 was kind of like this, like all of a sudden things just flipped. And just a lot of people just realized, you know, none of this narrative makes any sense, and our souls just wanted more. And now we're kind of tapping into that, and that's why it's so exhilarating learning about these topics and these things, because everything we've been learning about just is so boring. You know, it's just so dulling. There's no energy. There's no, and even when I was like in school, I was like, you know, I'd fall asleep and just what I was like, this is goofy. Like I'm not learning anything, and instinctively, I felt that it was incorrect. And then now when I'm reading books and learning about, you know, things about like magnets and Carl von Reichenbach and all of his work and things like that, you know, it's just remarkable the information that is out there and has always been there. And I feel like all of us, even like all the people who are in here, are all in tuned to that as well.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like, it's just a different way of taking in information and then asking questions. Because like we see the moon all the time, but we never ask a question like, why is it transparent during the day? Why can I see through the moon during the day?
Yeah.
You know, and just little things where it's like, well, yeah, I never kind of thought about it that way. And just, it's just, I feel like inevitably, like I said, it's two timelines. You have a group of people going this way, and you have a group of people going this way. And that's just kind of where 2020 was almost like a, if you want to say it, like a key point in which humanity would separate in two different ways. And one side sees it this way, and one side sees it that way.
Yeah, and we feel the split. And so what we're, you know, our drive right now is we are actually just, we're building our whole system. Like it's a paid forward system. So the people that are 28-day reset help the new people. The people in our Lifestyle Artist program help the 28-day reset. The people and the coaches and the mentors help the Lifestyle Artists. So we can actually leave it. We didn't sign up to do this for the next 30 years. We signed up to just share our journey and let people then find their way through that journey, so we can go off and see the world. Because I'm more interested. It's a funny thing right now because we can help people in their bodies. I'm like, yeah, we'll come over to Kuwait. And by the way, when you send the plane over, here are the 5 things I want to see when I'm there. Yeah, you know, because we're getting to that level of people that have the access to all the things that I want to go see. And that's really what I want. I want to see all the stuff that we've been told not to see, or all the strange stuff that we only hear about.
I like that. And that's what we should be doing, because we've been, you know, everything is being sold to us, you know, in like in a movie or a TV show or something, but we're not experiencing those things. And, you know, our body and our mind, our soul, it's all supposed to experience all of that too. You know, and I feel like that's what they're also trying to keep that trap on as well, so that people aren't exploring and seeing all these things. And I even on the land, you know, in Arizona, I walk around, check the land, see things and everything else. There's so much, you know, it's so much to open into our minds. And like you said, in all these different locations, there's a lot of old world buildings there too, that are all, you know, remarkably built, that you sit there and go, wait a minute, somebody was building this in the middle of the desert, you know, in an area in which is like 120 degrees. Like, how were you building at that time in which it was that temperature, you know? And it's a lot where when you see it, and my buddy he just got back from Europe, he sent me some pictures, and it's just you see all the fractals and frequency and energy in the design too. Yeah. And if you think about that, that's what's in our body too, all those fractals and the frequency. So it's meant to be. And even the flowers in front of me were meant to be smelling the roses and connected to them. You know, it's the shapes that draw us in. So I think that's an amazing thing that you're doing if you're going to travel around and see those things, and really take that in and take it in on the energetic principle rather than just seeing it visually, you know, for the picture in a picture frame.
Yeah, they're do that. So I'd love to talk again. Yeah, I think this, I mean, we have a really mainstream audience who is very quickly coming to like, we specifically stayed out of the fray for a long time so we could find the people that we help them heal their bodies. And in healing their bodies, they have to answer the first basic question is, I thought it was like this, but my body's doing this now and I'm healing, which means I'm now open to other things. And that was our strategy. It's like, let's help them with something that's important to them, and then let's let them ask the questions. And I think you're part of those asking the questions. So I'd love to have this conversation again, and maybe even nail down into some more specific topics, like stuff we learned about the body. I love the other one the other day, pearly whites.
Oh, yes. The pearls.
Like, oh, that makes so much sense. You know, like where the etymology, because I'm really big into etymology and names and how we got there, like religion, bring us back into the army.
Yeah.
So I'd love to have more of those conversations if you're open to it.
Yeah, I'm totally down. And what's your sign? What are you? What's your birthday?
I'm a 29 degrees Sagittarius.
Oh, okay, you're the fire sign. Okay.
Yeah, and I have a 16 degree Capricorn moon.
Gotcha.
And then,
so
but all the way over, as a 29 degree, that makes me a Grandmaster Sag, but I'm a Grandmaster Virgo, which 2 + 9 is 11.
Makes sense.
And then I have a 21 degree Aries rising, which is a Grandmaster Sagittarius Aries. So when I figured out that my only reason to be here on this planet was to punch a hole, and talk about etymology, my first name is Nathaniel with the AEO, which means, if you look at it, it means God has already given, not gift of God, or gift from God. My second name is Gerard, which is Gary, which means spear that pierces the water. We're all water, fascia. And then Lineham is to find a new homestead. So when I basically kind of discovered who I was and why I was here, then all of a sudden I took all the pressure off, and I'm like, this is why I'm here. I'm not trying to do anything else. I am just here to punch through this myself, be the example, and share it with other people. And that's all we care about. I mean, we don't have salaries. We work. I mean, we have money that comes in, supports. We have a couple centers around the world and we're getting more because we want to bring people like you in and give you a bigger platform. Like this next year, our media is going to go 10x, and then our human reach is going to go 10x too. So we'll be in the hundreds of millions of people that are doing something every day, and our media will be in the tens of millions. And what we want to do is what we're doing already is we're creating landing spots for people like yourself so that we can take away things like food and shelter and community and stuff like that, so that we can just share and help other people through their journey.
It's amazing. That's the most important thing. And I think what you just said too is if the information is put out there, and that's why I started talking about electroculture with the food shortages and all that nonsense. If the information is put out there, then people can just apply it and do it themselves. And I think that's really important because that's never shown that way. It's always like, for $99.99, I'll teach you this. But in reality, if we put the information out there, it will help others try it, resonate, and then they'll do it and tell other people. And that's how it spreads, in my opinion, the fastest, because you're putting the information out there for somebody to be able to kind of tap in at the level that they're currently at so that they can learn. Because everybody is at a different level. And sometimes you just kind of need something to learn about at a certain point of your time of your life. And I feel like even us connecting at this time, it's like it feels the right time to connect. And yes, I would love to obviously do more. I'm sure we could chat for hours. I feel like me and you are the flip of each other, obviously. In astrology, we're the complete flip. Yeah. And, right side by side, because it's on the cusp as well, too. But yeah, I would definitely love to chat more, and we'll definitely do another one. And I'm thankful for having me on and being able to chat. I'll bring more books next time too. I'll put together a little collection so we have just some pictures of things. But yeah, definitely we'll do another. And thank you for having me on. Yeah,
keep posting that great content because it's my entertainment in the evening. So I appreciate it immensely.
Yeah, it's education and entertaining at the same time.
I'm happy. I'm happy.
Invaluable invaluable for our children.
Yes.
If you've got that access to the homeschooling group, I homeschooled my children, and having them the basis of what life is really about, what's really going on in their world is invaluable. So you're doing a great service to our little ones also. Appreciate you very much.
I'm happy to hear that and happy to put it out there.
Appreciate you so much.
Take care.
See you guys.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Guys, if this resonates with you, send us, put some messages in the comments. We'll be posting this live. Come into the live and put your messages. Let us know what you feel. For some of you who have been around for a while, what we're doing is we're creating television content channels. So that this is the start of it. We're bringing people like Matt to you who spend all their lives researching, studying, learning, so that they can share with you. There's just a group of people. Matt, I can't wait to do your astrology. There's a group of people that are just here to help you through it, and we want to. Well, what we are is we're bringing them to you. So when we post this up, it'll be up in a little bit. Make sure you comment in there. Tell us what you thought. And if there's cutouts or stuff that really resonate with you, record it, cut it out, use our content, post it all over. Everything we have is open source, so you can take our stuff and use it anytime, any place. Thank you all for joining. It was fantastic, and thank you, Matt, for coming on.